Has NIL, name, image, and likeness, and transfer portal, has that evened the field? Hey, if you like this kind of content, how about subscribing to our channel if you haven't done that yet? Do us that solid and take care of that business. Subscribe to the channel, hit the alarm bell, that way you get all of our drops. Also, I'm trying to get to my first 1,000 subscribers, so if you can help along with that, go ahead and do that too. So,
what are we waiting for?
Yo, this is Tribe with Yo Tribe Sports Bag. I'm back at it again today with you, and we're talking some sports. We're getting into some college football because all of this football is coming upon us right away, so we better get down to it. Because I know why you're here. You know why you are here. You saw the thumbnail, and that thumbnail said, the Alabama Crimson Tide, the final chapter? Well, the way things are looking right now with teams changing from conference to conference and teams getting better, teams that weren't good that are now getting a lot better, taking a lot of these recruits to go along with them, 5 stars and otherwise. That has to be a question that is on people's mind, especially these Alabama Crimson Tide fans and foes of the Crimson Tide. So let's get down to it. Is this the end for Alabama? Well, we can't quite answer that right now, but we have to get a little bit of a perspective of back in the day, how Alabama was going about its business before they got to this juggernaut they've had for the 14 years Nick Saban has been there. Let's go back to 1992. 1992, Gene Stallings was the head coach of Alabama, and they hadn't won a national championship in quite some time up to that point. In fact, that was the last national championship they had gotten until Nick Saban jumped on board. But at that time, Alabama built their legacy, had multiple national championships, but no Heisman Trophy winners. And they were still able to get the job done by being champions and building this big-time program that we see today. So Gene Stallings, let's not forget about the years in which he was a dominant coach. And the year he won his national championship in 1992, beating up on the Miami Hurricanes, who were considered a very good team at the time. In fact, one of the great teams in college football at the time, and all he had at the time was John Copeland. Yeah, just all he had. These were top players. They ended up going into the NFL draft. John Copeland, as I mentioned. Eric Curry was another one of those players. Derek Lassick, not exactly a top player, but he was on that team as well, and he did wonders for the Crimson Tide back then. Sherman Williams was his backup, but let's not forget the inimitable David Palmer. The deuce was loose, and he was probably the best dynamic player that Alabama's had up until now, the Nick Saban years. But up until then, I think he might have been the most dominant player ever. But anyways, we have to give you a little bit of perspective of how all was before Nick came along and showed Alabama fans and the rest of the world that championship football belongs in Tuscaloosa. So let's get down to why things might be changing. The reason why, well, look, things have changed. Nick's come aboard, 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and they've won championships because of it when they didn't have any Heisman Trophies winners in the past, and they were still winning. So we have 3 Heisman Trophy winners with the Alabama Crimson Tide, 2 running backs, 1 quarterback. The most recent is Bryce Young, who just won it in his sophomore year, true sophomore at that. Saban has been there for 14 years. He's been at Alabama and Tuscaloosa doing what he's been doing the do for 14 years. And we see what he has done. 6 national championships in that short period of time. Without a question, that Alabama program is the premier program in the entire country up until now. And it may be even a couple of years from now because of all the great recruiting, but everyone's jumped on board now. Here's a stat just to show you how great Nick Saban has been while he was at Alabama and since he's been at Alabama. Over those 14 years, on average, he's won a national championship every 2 years. But he's won an SEC championship on average every 3 seasons. Now, I don't know whether a national championship is easier to get than an SEC championship, but he has his problems in the SEC, so the problems may start there. And as we saw last season, Georgia can be his problem because Texas A&M was his problem a little bit last year too at College Station. So those are the things that I'm looking to talk about and kind of bring perspective to as I try to talk about this over the next several minutes. The Tide has become a benchmark for success. So with that benchmark, other teams are realizing what it takes to become successful. And the best way to do it without getting Nick Saban is to take his coaches. He's had a litany of outstanding coaches over the years, whether it was people who have helped him build his empire at Alabama, or even some who have helped out with him when he was at LSU, where he got his first championship. The blue chippers that come to Alabama just come. He's the Pied Piper of college football. I don't know if I could say was yet, but he is so far the Pied Piper of college football. All of the top players seem like they're interested in coming to Tuscaloosa because that's their best idea or their best path to getting to the NFL, because they've sent a lot of players there as well. But right here, they just have to be college players and college winners, which Alabama has been. No state is safe from Nick Saban. You go all the way out to Hawaii and you see what he's done there. He's come back with their best quarterback. He's come back with another championship with that quarterback. So no matter where you are, if you have great players, Nick Saban will show up, or he will recognize you. He will ask you gently and nicely, do you want to be a champion? And if you can't agree to that, chances are you're heading to Tuscaloosa, and that's exactly what he's been doing all of these years. So let's get down to some other things that might have changed the playing field so far. Has NIL, name, image, and likeness, and transfer portal, has that evened the field? It may have just done just that, because when you look at these other schools out there who weren't that good over the past several years while Nick was dominating, they're getting better in terms of their recruiting, and these coaches that are bringing these players in, well, they're doing just as well. None other than Mario Cristobal, a former coach on Nick Saban's staff, the former recruiting coordinator, the guy responsible for bringing in the players that had helped Nick Saban get these national championships. He's now at the University of Miami, and he is securing 5-star players, 4-star players, something that Miami hasn't done in about 20 years on a consistent basis. That's taken away from the Nick Saban pot. That's taken away from the Alabama continued legacy that they're trying to have there. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of, is this the beginning of the end for the University of Alabama? We'll continue to find out, because even in that mix with name, image, and likeness, you have HBCUs now jumping on the bandwagon. Deion Sanders at Jackson State University, and HBCU, historically Black college and university. He's there. He's taking players. He did it in the last recruiting cycle where he took the #1 player in the entire country, Travis Hunter, from his alma mater, Florida State, and brought him to Jackson State. Jackson State University, the alma mater of Walter Payton, the great NFL player. So yeah, the landscape has certainly changed. Top players are no longer looking at Alabama as the only option. And there's still Ohio State out there. There's still Michigan out there. All of these teams that now want to get on the bandwagon of winning and continue legacy and becoming champions. That's what they want to do. And that's picking into the Alabama Crimson Tide litter box, the litter box of top players. That's what they're bringing in. That's what they've been bringing in. And they continue to do the same thing. But when into the oil guys get into the mix, those oil guys, meaning Texas and Oklahoma, bringing themselves to the SEC from the Big 12, that money's going to be spread around nice and thin. And there are going to be a lot more top recruits going to those schools too. So things are going to be a little bit more difficult for Alabama. Do you look at the money or do you look at the legacy? The way these players are going right now, coming out of high school, they want the legacy and they want the money. So they can always establish themselves somewhere else, because Oklahoma and Texas have a heck of a history and a lineage there as well. And a whole lot of cash, with Texas being the wealthiest school in the country right now when it comes down to 1A football, 1A sports, or 1A schools, because everyone knows Harvard. So we don't even need to talk about that. But that's something I thought I needed to let you all know. Recruiting used to be, and I really mean it, recruiting used to be automatic for Alabama. And it is still kind of sort of automatic for Alabama. But when 5-star players are turning down Alabama to go to Miami now, whether it's an NIL deal, name, image, and likeness, or whether they just feel that, you know what, let's become pioneers of something that used to be, which Miami once was, well, those are the other hurdles and obstacles that we're talking about. So let me continue to talk about this, because I know I'm getting a little bit long-winded, but those 5-star players that have made Alabama the juggernaut it ended up being, they flocked to Alabama unimpeded. And then they were coached up by some of the greatest coaches, as I mentioned earlier. The coaching staff, not just Nick Saban, those coaching staff that he had working with him. Kirby Smart won a national championship with Georgia as a disciple of Nick Saban. and you see others that were out there doing the same thing, the best coaching staff that you could possibly find. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, he was with him as well. Jimbo Fisher is now with Texas A&M, the first disciple of Nick Saban to beat him. And now, of course, Kirby Smart's the second because he won it in the national championship game. So we see the quality of players. We talked about Mario Cristobal being the recruiting coordinator, working for the team as well. So these guys know about winning football. They know how to bring the winners there. They did it at Alabama. Now they're going to their own places and they're doing it there. I just wanted to let you all know that the Alabama Crimson Tide, this could be the final chapter of what though? Bigger, better things? More championships? We don't know. See, Alabama just lost the national championship game to Georgia. Now that's, I don't know if you want to call it a surprise if you're an Alabama fan, or you don't want to call it a surprise because you are a Georgia Bulldog fan. The fact of the matter remains this: Alabama had some injuries, but it's football. You can't expect it to be healthy the entire season. Secondly, when you recruit the players that Alabama has recruited for so many years now, going on 2 decades, you're supposed to plug and play. When you have 5-star players backing up 5-star players and top-notch 4-star players looking to get their opportunity as well, one player goes down, the other player goes in. You're not supposed to miss a beat. You're not supposed to skip anything. But what happened against Georgia? They had their injuries and they could not recover. They could not plug and play. They could not put their transfer portal guys in, and they could not put their homegrown blue chip guys in. It just did not work out the way Alabama needed it to. So yes, I think this is the final chapter of Alabama being what we remember it right now, or as we know them right now. They're not going to disappear because Alabama football has too much legacy to just disappear. But there are so many biting on the heels of Alabama, and so many kids now with a different landscape to playing college football and the opportunities and choices they have. The money's there for them. Why else would they go to a school now? Alabama has money themselves, but still, Oklahoma, Texas. I mean, you have a billionaire down in Miami that's kind of funding, I guess, NIL, if you want to call it that. But that's the new landscape of college football. And the Alabama Crimson Tide is going to try to hang on because old champions don't die easy. They die hard. I'm Trav with Yo Trav Sports Bag. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Leave some comments below and like and subscribe the channel. Until next time.